Thanks so much for having me, Todd, and a privilege to be here in front of all of you. A privilege to serve God by serving his other children. That's how I begin nearly every day of my life. And I found it to be in that brief phrase to be a tremendous secret of the upside down kingdom in which we live is serving God by serving his other children. For many years, people would talk to me about love God, serve God, and I would say to myself, well, okay, but he hasn't really told me what he wants me to do, and everything I try to do for him blows up in my face. It took me a long time, but becoming a father really helped me to understand that God is just as pleased as a father of many billions of children when two of his children are cooperating and helping each other as we are when our children are helping each other instead of fighting and arguing and screaming. Once that was pointed out to me, it really became very, very simple for me to understand a way that even when I was broke, even when my business was a total flop and a failure, even when I wasn't earning a dime for what I do, I could still add value to people. And so when Todd asked me to join in the conversation tonight, I said, you know, there's this phrase that God has been kicking around for me, and it's not in my book because it actually came to me after I had already submitted the manuscript and all that. If it had come to me at the time, I would have included it in there. There's plenty in there that points to this, but the phrase that I got that I have been sharing with everybody who has any sort of spiritual lens through which to look is focus on the invisible. And you know, I've started to form language around this. I really believe one of the key aspects of becoming a very employable prospect, wherever you're trying to market your skills and services, is the ability, is mindset. And I think a lot of people think mindset primarily as, do you know the right equations? Do you know what 2 + 2 = 4? Do you know how to spell this word? Do you know the Pythagorean theorem or any of that other stuff that we learned growing up? But if you're trained to focus on the invisible, then you're going to understand intuitively or through experience that that's not the case. In fact, mindset encompasses a wide range of our total being as people. And so there is a cognitive side to it, right? 2 + 2 = 4, but there's also a neurological side to it, right? And the effects of chemicals that our brain produces when we're doing certain things. There's also a physical side to it. If you can ever remember, for example, having a gut feeling about something, or if you could ever remember your heart beating really fast and you felt like your heart was in your mouth, right? Those are physical sensations that accompany this, and they're part of your mindset. Another part of it is social, right? It's based on cues and interaction with other human beings and not just your own mind. Well, those are all invisible. We're not taught to think of those as anything other than feelings or maybe animalistic impulses. And in fact, they represent the totality of our thinking. And in many cases, they can drive the way we think. So I didn't want to go off on a tangent there. I just wanted to lay that as an example of something that's invisible. And the reason it's invisible is not because it's truly out of our reach. It's just no one tells us until much later in life, or until we've already messed it up, whatever the case may be. So what do I mean by the invisible? How can you focus on something you can't see? How do we identify something that is not visible to the naked eye? Our education system and our culture and pop culture and movies and pretty much every source of any kind of substantive content that we consume or are fed from a very young age teaches us only to focus on what's right in front of our eyes and can be tasted, smelled, touched, heard, right? Those are all the five senses. And yet if I were to ask you 3 simple questions that I ask everybody who comes on my show, and I ask everybody that I network with and everybody I interact with, I would know more about you in a matter of 2 minutes than most people will know about you in their lifetimes. Most people who you even come across, right? And when I say most people you come across, I'm talking about the grocery checkout person, the cab driver, the Uber driver, the person who brings the mail to your door, whatever, any human being that you have any kind of interaction with, even ones that you have lengthy interactions with, I can learn more about you than those people can, because I choose to focus on the invisible. Now, this is a kingdom setting. We know, right, that we are told to fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. But what does that mean, right? I read that verse countless times. I'm like, yeah, okay, I understand what that means intellectually, but I don't see what is not seen. So how do I focus on it? And of course, what it turns out that he's talking about is not that there are objects invisible to the naked eye that are actually there. But what he's talking about is what lies behind a person, what lies in front of a person, and what lies beyond a person. You see, the culture has us all backwards. They're trying to tell us that we are nothing more than a highly evolved animal, $9 worth of household chemicals assembled in an animated body that somehow, miraculously, through an undirected process of evolution, has feelings and emotions and an intellect and the ability to create and design incredible things, but it's all an accident. No, it's not an accident, right? So understanding that that person is not just a clump of cells, not just a big kerfuffle of flesh and bones and water and all that, but in fact that that person is a living, breathing story, changes the game. Okay. Now you can use this on just about any human being you ever come in contact with, including prospective employers. I've seen it work on salespeople. I've seen it work on fundraising people, both people raising funds and people who are being solicited to donate funds. I have seen it work on executives. I've seen it work on people working menial jobs, entry level. I've seen it work on kids. I've seen it work on adults. I've seen it work on women, on men, on people of any race I've ever tried it on. I have never had anybody refuse to answer the questions. I've never had anybody say that was a boring conversation when it was done. And the code that you have to understand is that we are living in a story, right? This is his story, capital H for his, right? But as a result, we are also living out, tiny little chapters of the story in the grand scheme of things. But there are stories, and only we can live them out. What does that all point to? It points to the fact that if you can identify the person sitting across from you in a job interview as not just an employer, not just a hiring manager, not just a recruiter or whatever the case may be, but as a living, breathing story, and treat them that way, you can differentiate yourselves from a lot of other applicants they're going to talk to a lot more often than you have. See, these people are bombarded, especially in a tight job market or in a hot job market. Either way, their job is difficult. If the labor market is tight and they can't find people because everybody's employed, big challenge for them. If it's flooded with people looking for jobs, they can't make up their mind. Who should I hire? So they're going to do what human beings do when there's a plethora of choices and they're confused. They're going to turn to the person next to them that they trust the most and say, what do you think? Right? Your job, though, number one, if you can, is to try and have somebody inside the company that exploit those relations. When I say exploit, not exploit in the negative sense, but exploit those relationships if you can. If you can't, if you've got to go somewhere where you don't know people in the company, then you've got to you've got all of a couple of minutes to make a distinction between yourself and the next applicant. And I don't care what level of employment you're starting out at, this stuff will set you in a class by yourself. I know this because it's the same stuff that I used when I was 21 years old, had no degree, no prospects. I went and got a job over in a foreign country by using the same kind of tactics, and I differentiated myself. And then I ended up getting promoted 4 times at that job because I based it on serving God's other children. I didn't know that at the time. I wasn't even in the kingdom yet. I just did what I had been shown how to do by a mentor. But it worked. And it'll work if you do it enough with the right people, it'll work for you too. So I'm aware of my tendency to sort of turn this into a preach-a-thon. I don't want to do that before either giving Todd or somebody an opportunity to raise a hand, ask a question, make a comment, anything that I said so far that really jumped out on you. I'll take a brief water break here and open for any comments or anything like that.
Well, I think anybody feel free to chime in here. I think it's an exciting thing that you're talking about. Like, I love this idea that people are a living, breathing story that you shared. And of course, I talked to you about this a little bit back. So, I want to give everybody else a moment. What really comes out at you as you start to think about this? Now, I know that Paul's going to give us more stuff, but like, what are you thinking when you hear what he shared with y'all so far? Anybody chime in? You can come off mute. Allison, you're going to be bold. I saw you come off mute. Michael?
Yeah, I appreciate the insight. There's a organization based out of my hometown of Minneapolis called Peer Ministry, and we use this format, WHEAT. I can't remember the acronym WHEAT, just who are you, where are you from, acquaintances, just all those kind of things. I'd have my high school students and adult leaders go through this training. I was one of the trainers for it, and we would go on every 3 years. In the church I served, there was a youth gathering in a major city, and I was challenged my peer ministers to take their small group and to do this with the cab driver, anyone else, and that became the gathering. It wasn't the musicians and the speakers and everything else, it was the people. And we use that every year when we'd go on a service trip too, is when you're working with a family or an organization, how many people did you get to know, and how well do you know them? And then all of a sudden, that's 25 years ago when we started all this, social media kicks in, and now these kids have thousands of friends and acquaintances across the world. So it's kind of cool that you started that even before you knew what you were doing or how it could connect to your faith. But that's huge, and so it's going on everywhere. So it's cool to be a part of this right now.
Certainly makes things happen for me. Anybody else?
I love what you said, what you started with. If not necessarily what you started with, but it's keeping it simple. It's your comment about when two people get together and you see your children working together in unity and helping and loving and supporting each other. I mean, that's it for me. That's I keep it as simple as that if we love, the first 2 commandments, if we love God, like if we love God as our God, and we love our neighbors as ourselves, or we love our neighbors as God loves our neighbors more so, then that's it. To me, that's the essence of it. And to your point, I'm looking forward to what you have to say, because ultimately we have to get to know our neighbors to really, you love on your neighbors, but you also have to get to know them. It's one thing just to love on somebody. It's a different thing to get to know somebody and truly love on them. Mm-hmm. Really looking, I love what you said and kind of the journey you've had to get to where you are. I'm looking forward to what you have to say.
Well, I just want to say, and I'm going to tease just a little, because the first time I talked to Paul was right before we had one of our Stephen Ministry groups, and I used his 3 questions, like literally a few hours after we had the conversation with that group, and let them kind of share those with each other. And it was probably one of the best sessions we've had in our group in a long, long time. So not to oversell you, Paul, but I know I'm excited to hear where you're going. So keep going.
Well, I think it would be appropriate to share a little bit of the journey that I went on through this, because the danger in saying stuff like this, Todd, is always that you can oversimplify things. You can make it sound like, oh, it's a hack. All you got to do is press these buttons, and the next thing you know, money comes out. So, since I mentioned that job that I got in a foreign country back when I was 21 and got promoted 4 times, let me tell you the story of what happened after my 4th promotion. Because that was right around when I started coming into the kingdom. And I had been doing so well at customer service. That was the job I was in. It was a telephone call center customer service role. And they kept promoting me. They added me to new product teams, where they promoted me again into leadership. But something changed, shifted for me, and I became proud. And I had a serious ego problem. I really thought I was, they should be promoting me faster. Look at all that look at how good I've done so far. That's, and they weren't moving fast enough for this brilliant 21-year-old kid who knew so much after all. So I left. I got an opportunity to go work on the completely opposite end of town, in a position where I totally fell flat on my face and got fired after just 5 or 6 weeks on the job, because I was angry and frustrated and couldn't make things happen. It was a sales role, and I knew nothing about sales. Well, actually, I take that back. I knew plenty about sales. I just didn't know that I knew it because I thought it was completely different. But anyway, I got fired from that job. It was going into the wintertime. I was in London, England, and I couldn't find work. And I was faced with the prospect of doing something that I had avoided doing for over a year now and did not want to go back to doing, and that was asking my father for more money to live on. So, in a somewhat impulsive decision, as you tend to make being a young man at that age, I decided to join the U.S. military, and signed up and got put on the delayed entry program. So I didn't ship out until March of 2003. But in the meantime, plodded by in England, took a few little jobs here just to, keep some money coming in, and then hopped a bird back over to Fort Leonard Wood and started my training. And I went through, I served in the military 5.5 years on active duty, and then did some time in the reserves after I got out. I did 2 deployments to Iraq, which were fantastic times, a lot of great memories, a lot of great experiences, wouldn't trade it for anything. And then I came back, by which time I was married, and my first child was due just as I got out of active duty. He also appeared on the scene. And so at that point, the new 9/11 GI Bill had kicked in, and I had the opportunity to go to a private liberal arts college out here in Tacoma, near where I live, which seemed like, oh, okay, that door's opening for me. So, okay, went through that, started studying communications, discovered I loved radio and broadcasting, and I had this voice, and everybody's, oh yeah, you got a great voice. And went and interned in 2 of the major radio stations in Seattle, wanted to get on the air and be a talk show host, and figured some doors would open as long as I just kept at it. And a few doors did open here and there, but nothing that I could build a living on. Nothing I could make a career out of. It was all part-time, minimum wage, cut your teeth kind of thing, which would have been fine when I was 22. Now that I was 30 and had 2 kids and a mortgage and a wife, is a bit of a different story. So also, it was the bottom of the recession, should I mention, 2009 through 2011. It was not the best of economic times, and so it was hard to find a job. I did eventually get one job when I got after I finished my degree. They chewed me up, and they also fired me after about 6 weeks on the job, and they never told me why. And so we get to the bottom of 2011, going into 2012, and I took on the attitude, I just got to get a job. I just got to get something going so I can pay the bills. And I turned to a field I had never had any interest in, which was the insurance industry. And the thing about the insurance industry that I didn't understand at the time was that is a very, very strong relationship-based type of business to be in, which actually played to my strengths. I didn't know that. I just needed a job. So I went and interviewed, and the guy liked me, and he was one of the top agents in the state. And so he said, well, we've got a position open if you'd like to come and try in sales. And I said, well, if I can learn from you, then there's a chance I could do well at it. I just need somebody who actually knows what they're doing to show me how to do it. And I went, and I actually did really well in his system. And then I parlayed that into a second insurance job at Liberty Mutual, which was much more independent. I was much more of a field agent, going out and networking and building relationships. And over time, I just sort of began to accept. I had been bitter for a while. I'd been really angry at God because I hadn't got my shot in radio. But I kind of settled in. I said, well, maybe this is what he wants me to do, and maybe I just didn't know it, and it's not really that fun, but I do enjoy building relationships. I do enjoy schmoozing people, so I can live with that. And I did the insurance industry from 2012 to 2018. I did 6 years of constant week after week after week, networking, building relationships, taking people to lunch, paying my own money. I organized a cigar poker night at this local place. We could set up tables and play Texas Hold'em and smoke cigars and have a bunch of yucks. I tried to start up a podcast for the chamber. I became involved in several chambers. I became involved in Rotary. I got into all these organizations, and I networked my butt off. But I never came close to getting the kind of momentum I'd hoped to. And all through that time, there were unresolved issues from my younger days, which had to be dealt with, and I didn't see them coming. I didn't see coming living through I didn't see that I was going to have to go through getting used to living full-time as a married man. The military had always interrupted that. Now I was at home full-time, and that was it. Having 2 kids, 4 to 5 years of transitioning out and away from the military psychology and the way it sinks deep into your consciousness, and finding work, particularly work that I had not really aspired to do. But as long as there was plenty of schmoozing and yucks and all that to be done, I was okay with it. And all the while, I kept running into people who kept telling me, you should be on the radio. You've got such a great voice. And I'd say, yeah, okay. And other people would tell me, you really have this. I would do these seminars on networking, and people would say, that was so helpful. That was so informative. You do such a good job as a public speaker. And I would get recruited into public speaking gigs. I got recruited to be the MC of the local Miss America pageant. Well, there's a man and a woman MC. So I got dressed up in a tux and did all the announcements, and everybody thought it was cool, and they loved my voice. And all this keeps happening. And I'm like, why are you sending me all these people to tell me I should be on the radio and I should be doing public speaking and all that? You stop me. right? You blocked me from doing that. I wanted to do that. You made me sell insurance instead. And, I was dealing with being angry and depressed, and my addiction resurfaced, and I just, it all came to a head in 2016 when I said, I don't know what I signed up for when I came into the kingdom, but I know it wasn't this. This is not how I want to live my life. It's a mess. Internally. Externally, it looks fine. Internally, it was bad. And the following year, I got an invitation to go to Wild at Heart boot camp with John Eldridge and his gang out in Colorado. And it was August of 2017 that August 20th of 2017, they did a teaching. It was the last teaching before we left. And it was on the orphan spirit and how we live much of our lives as orphans, believing we've either been abandoned or betrayed or passed over. And that was when God the Father himself made a personal appearance in my life. And I just lost it. I went outside and wept for 30 minutes because of all the rotten things I'd believed about him and about myself and about everybody I loved. But it was also the beginning of something new. August 20th, 2017 is a day that stood still for me. It's still going on. It hasn't stopped since then. It started my entrepreneurial journey. The difference was that now I was doing an entrepreneurial journey with 6 years of experience building strong relationships with quality people in a business, but now I was doing it in a business that I loved, right? Executive ghostwriting, content creation, public speaking, podcasting. And over time, I began to see how all of that had not been wasted like I thought it had. Over time, I began to see how all of that was not God making me walk in circles for no reason. He was actually making me walk in circles to walk out a lot of the gunk that was still left inside. And I don't think it's fair for me to get up here and just give you tips and pointers without telling you that part of the story. Because if you don't know where I got this stuff from, then you might think I'm just another huckster up here saying, just do this and do that and send me a check when you're done and we'll call it even. And that's not how I operate. So I go into entrepreneur. I got fired again. I keep getting fired everywhere I go. That's why I don't work for other people anymore. I'm not employable long-term. I got fired again from my last insurance job. All of a sudden, networking didn't work anymore. Networking did, but every deal I got, I couldn't close. I could not close a deal. 6 months went by and I couldn't close anything. I'm like, this is no different than what I was doing for the last 6 years, but it doesn't work. By that time, I'd written my first book and I was circulating it wherever I went. And then it happened. I got fired. And I made the decision that day, and on the drive home, I didn't even wait. I didn't tell anybody. I just said, I'm hiring myself. I'm going to go work for, this is my shot. I'm 37 years old at the time, 38 years old. My window's closing. I'll wait much longer on this, and I'll be too old to do something like this to give it time to build up to where I want it to be. And so I started, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what the marketplace wanted. I didn't know what to offer them. But I had the work ethic, and I had the relationship building skills. And I had something that I want you guys to know that you have as well. I want you to know that even if you are flat broke, I don't care if you don't have a dime, 2 nickels to rub together, or a penny to your name. Our Father tells us we have an inherent value because we exist. Because we exist, right? Now, it might not take the shape that you would dream of it taking just yet. He's going to take you through a process to get to that. What you might have to do right now in the moment is take what's in your hand and serve his other children with all your heart. So to tell you the truth, executive ghostwriting is an awesome business. I love doing it, right? but it's not actually my dream of dreams. My dream of dreams is to be on a stage with a mic, influencing millions of people, selling books, jet setting around, hobnobbing with people, you know, meeting people, making connections, and being a people broker, right? That's why I love networking, is because I get to introduce person A to person B. They get connected, they do business, and they share just a tiny bit of the proceeds with me, which, if it's a big enough deal, will feed my family for a year. That's what I really dream of doing, but that's not there yet. So I'm serving God with what I have right now. I'm serving his children with what I have. Which is to say, you also have something that you can somehow make yourself useful to someone inside the kingdom, outside the kingdom, doesn't matter. Right now, even if it's digging a ditch, taking out the trash, picking up dog poop, cutting grass, whatever it is, you can do something for free, up front, asking nothing in return. That's what this book is about. It's about learning how to do it for free until your father says, pay him or her. And then it happens. And then at that point, you can't stop it, because you've demonstrated, I will sow seed even when I have no rain. I will sow seed even when the sun is scorching. I will sow seed in the middle of the night. I'll sow it in the middle of the day. I will sow it and sow it and sow it, because you command me to. I will be kind to people even when they don't return the kindness. I will show generosity to them even when they don't reciprocate. And I'll just keep doing it until the right person sees it happening and identifies what it is. And that's what happened for me. That's what happened for me. So I got fired in June of 2018. And around this time last year, October 2019, a year and a half later, is when Aaron Walker comes onto my show. He's my mentor. He leads this group called the Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind. It was my second time interviewing him for my podcast. In between the first time and that time, I had connected him with probably seven to 10 people he didn't know that he wanted to know. Got him on shows, got him connected to other hosts, got him connected with people in his hometown he didn't know them, got him connected with people high up in certain ministries. And when he came on the show the second time, we did the interview, and afterwards he said to me, you know, you've done so many kind things for me. You've never asked for anything in return. You need to let me do something for you. And I said, I wouldn't know what to ask for. And he said, well, I can tell by the way you talk, your business isn't going well. I said, it's a complete flop, Aaron. I don't make a dime. And he said, well, what's something you can do that the marketplace would value? What's a skill you have that people pay for? And I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, well, I'm a talented writer. I've been able to write my whole life. So we had a conversation, and he said, well, let's do a trial run. You come and write for my team. We'll get you into the mastermind, and we'll see where it goes. So I started writing for him in November of 2019. And 6 weeks after that, I get a call from somebody else in the mastermind who was watching all this content that was starting to come out from Aaron and saying, there's no way you have enough time to write all this. What's the secret? So he told him the secret. And that man approached me and said, I need help writing a bunch of emails every month. I haven't got time to do it. What does it cost? And let's get started. And I had a business. 10 months now, I've posted a profit every quarter this year. I'm in a mastermind. I have my own personal board of directors. I have a network. I have access to people that if you look at it in the natural, I have no business talking to these people. I set up phone calls between, Fortune 1000 executives, and I just get to sit in on the call. There's these two giants in the industries talking to each other, having a grand old time, and me, right here in my living room in Olympia, Washington. That's what you get when you follow this book. Now, you don't have to be a businessman. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be a CEO for it to benefit you. You just have to realize that it all comes from Luke chapter 16, verse 9, right? It says, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it's gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. It's spelled out for us right there. Use the worldly wealth you have. And he's not talking just about money. Oh, my screen just went. Hang on, I got to fix it. I hate it when this thing goes off in the middle of then it makes me do my code. There we go. Sorry, I hate that, but oh well. Comedy moment, light interruption. Luke 16, verse 9. Use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it's gone, they'll welcome you. You'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. And worldly wealth can be more than money, right? It can be time, it can be talent, it can be treasure. If you don't know where to go to do this, there's people that need help all over the place. Your neighbors need help. Nonprofits need help. Businesses need help. Just a month ago, while the weather was still warm, I contacted people I knew in downtown Olympia. We've had a lot of the Antifa people down there spray painting graffiti all over the buildings. Well, I got this group of young men that I mentor in the church. I said, hey, we want to come down and help somehow. What can we do? They said, well, you could come and help paint over the graffiti. We said, we're there. We went downtown and I said, now you guys, I took the young men, I said, listen to me. You are going to get offered jobs because you do this. At some point, someone's going to see what you're doing and they're going to say, hey, would you like to come and do that for me? I'll pay you. That's not the reason we're doing it, right? We're not doing it so we can dangle out a carrot and stick type of thing. It just happens. Because when you're generous up front, your Father sees that and he rewards you. So I've gone on long enough again. I need some water. So who's got a question or a comment?
First off, I just want to love that you're using that particular verse and that particular story, because it's such an odd story in the book, in the Bible. And so it's fascinating that that comes, but it's a powerful story. It's one that a lot of people struggle with. And so I really appreciate that. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Who else? Nobody else want to hear me? Everybody wants to hear me just continue running my mouth? I can go all night. Not really.
Go ahead, Kevin, you were going to say something?
No, I wasn't. I was getting distracted as well by something running around my feet. But now that you said it, or now that you asked, I missed some of it because I had to walk away for a second. But your moment, would you say, and this is where I had to walk away, when you were at the Wild at Heart conference, was that your breaking point? Was that your turning point? You know, I see always a point where it's like, you get to a point, it's like, aha, I'm here.
Yeah, because what happened was, like, up until that point, when I was in the insurance business, insurance was always failing you on one end or another, right? So if the customer didn't turn into a temper tantrum about the price, the carrier would turn into a problem saying, oh, we said we were going to cover that, but now we're not going to cover it. And so whenever that happened, prior to boot camp, I would have to go and find a place, usually the cab of my truck or my car, and sit there and just let as many F-bombs as I could go privately so that nobody could hear me. The day after I get back from boot camp, August 21st, 2017, I'm sitting there at a networking event, and I get a message on my phone from a carrier saying, this new big account that you just moved to us, thank you so much for that, but we're not going to cover it. So now I got to go back to this client with the egg on my face and tell him, I'm sorry, the carrier's declined. And in the past, what I had always done, lying had become very common for me at this point. I would come and I'd blame the carrier, or I'd blame just the insurance industry. I'd blame underwriting. I'd blame, and none of it ever worked. It just made people more angry and more upset. And I'm standing there. I'm standing there in this sort of lobby at the building I was at, and I'm freaking out. I get in my truck, and I got to drive back to the office, and I let her rip for a little bit. But then by the time I got back to the office, I said, wait a minute. Did last weekend not happen? Meaning boot camp. Did I not just get assured by God the Father that he was personally there? Did I not burn on the inside and break down in tears and repent of all of my idolatry and bad behavior? And I didn't. There was the answer to that was unequivocally no. I lived through it. It had happened. And hang on, I've got kids in the background.
We don't know anything about that over here.
Yeah, no, it's 2020 life. So I roll up to my office, and I'm sitting there in the car, and I'm like, what do I do with this then? If you just showed up over this past weekend, what do I do with this? And he said, trust me and tell the truth. That's it. Trust me and tell the truth. So I get on the phone to my client. His name is Garrett. I said, Garrett, I owe you an apology. I've made a mistake with your insurance. I didn't check the underwriting guidelines strong enough. I didn't call them and make absolutely sure, and now they're declining coverage. I will do everything within my power to get you back in the situation you were in, and you don't ever have to ask me for help with insurance ever again if you don't want to. I totally understand that. I hope you can forgive me. And there was a pause on the other end of the line. And then he said, well, wait a minute. Aren't you appointed with my former carrier, right? The one we'd switched him over from, the previous insurance company. And I said, yes. And he said, well, couldn't we keep the insurance with you and just switch to the former carrier? My jaw dropped. I said, you want to do that? He's like, yeah, I want a relationship. I don't care who the carrier is. I care who my agent is. And I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I couldn't bring myself to say, look, I just made your life incredibly difficult. You still, none of that made sense. That's what it is when you live in the upside down kingdom, right? Nothing makes sense to this world when you're operating with your Father at your back. None of what happens to you makes sense to them. They'll be like, how did that happen? And that was the very first confirmation the very next day. First confirmation, if I would just stick to telling the truth, if I would just stick to trusting him instead of trying to make it happen in my own strength and tell lies when it didn't go well. Oh man, that's why I say August 20th, 2017 is still going on for me, because that started a snowball chain reaction. And now I walk around, people are shocked. I go on their podcast, says, oh yeah, I'm a recovering egomaniac. Who says that about themselves? I do. I'm a recovering prideaholic. I'm a recovering sex addict. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not ashamed to say it. I tell strangers, I tell people anywhere I go, yeah, guilty. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. It does. I appreciate that. I think we all go through very difficult times in our lives. And everyone is significant in its own event to that person, right? And the impact it has on that person, the others around them, the rest of us don't know, but the Father does. Mm-hmm. The Father knows what we are dealing with. The Father knows what we are carrying inside. Because as men, mostly as men, we don't talk about it. We harness.
We're not allowed to.
Yeah, we harness it. So no, and you're a normal guy. There's a lot of guys out there, or a lot of people out there. I just won't say guy, but there's a lot of people out there that have this significant event in their life. It's like this aha moment. I saw the angel show up at the base of my bed and spoke to me in this way. And you just kind of have this story around rigor and rawness and just grinding, right? And things pulling away from you. And a lot of people would throw in the towel and give up, right? And stuff. And almost you have to do that. But when you give in and throw in the towel, it's not giving up on life and throwing in the towel. It's giving up on me trying to make it happen and allowing God to have the towel, allowing God to have it. So I love your story. I think it's great. And I think hopefully people here will take a tidbit away, and it will influence their lives in a positive manner.
I'm thankful that you said that. I think I would be remiss. I'm sure people have been wondering, okay, well, when's he going to tell us how exactly this is done? But I hope, look, I'll put it in a couple of ways. First of all, everywhere I go, when I tell this story and when I talk about these things, I have this strange effect on people, and I call it magnetism. Well, I don't call it that. Everybody calls it that. But the thing about magnetism is most people think when you say magnetism, you think most people, that means you draw everyone towards you. No, magnets polarize. So some people might be listening to this and thinking, forget him. And other people are thinking, I really want to know more about this. And I'm used to that. I'm used to majority of people, just kind of nod, right? Because they're not there yet. And then there's a few people who are like, no, wait. I need your phone number. I need to talk to you some more. I need to know what this is about. And funnily enough, the first chapter that I talk about in my book is you got to become a magnet instead of a pusher. Most people are pushers. I don't mean drug pushers. It's just a figure of speech, but most people are pushing themselves. And I don't do that. I create a pull. How do I do that? You just saw me. You just saw how I do it. I tell the unflinching, authentic, vulnerable truth. And if it bothers you and it rubs you the wrong way, you go your separate ways. And if it doesn't, you stick around. I'm not after reaching the masses. I'm after reaching the many to find the few. I want a handful of the right people in my life. And I think most people, if they could think that deeply enough about it when it comes to the career, there's an awful lot of businesses out there that you shouldn't work for. Are they bad? Are they wicked? Are they evil? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying they're not right for you. You should want to work in a career and for a company that you can get behind. That's more than just a paycheck for you. That represents a mission, even if your part of that mission is sweeping the floor. There are companies out there that are like that, where the people who do the most menial tasks love it there. And whether it's by accident of fate or whether they've actually taken enough time to think about it, they are aligned with that group of people. So if you're looking for a job, right, you want to look at the values of that institution. Because that's what's going to create magnetism anyway. A company that's misaligned with you, they're not going to want you around. They might take you for a little while. They're not going to want you around long term. There's several other things in here. I mean, it is these are kind of entrepreneurial, but they don't have to be. I never forget that even if you're working a job, even if you are an employee, right, or you're searching employment, in my opinion, you're still in business. You're still operating off the same principle. Someone hires you because you please them, right? You're able to perform a service or a role that they otherwise have to perform themselves, and they don't want to, or they can't, they don't have time to, but they do have the budget to pay someone else to do it. And if they can find the right person, that makes them happy. So again, it comes back to that same principle I started with: serve God by serving his other children. What puts a smile on your father's face is what puts a smile on your employer's face, right? Diligent, thoughtful, intentional service, whether you personally think they deserve it or they pay you enough or not, beside the point. Go out there and serve. Go out there and serve before you're hired. Go out there and serve before you find a job. Go out there and add value to another human being. Your Father will see to it that you're taken care of. And so much of what is happening when you look at people who are unemployed, who are poor, who are, who are struggling, and obviously this is not a, I don't even want to make this a generalization. But what happens when you're in that situation is you begin to feel like you have fewer and fewer and fewer choices in life. So your money amplifies. Money is not the corrupter. Money simply amplifies the corruption that is within. So you get people who are incredibly wealthy, and they're also have wonderful hearts, and they give and serve generously. And then you get people who are very, very wealthy, and they have greedy hearts. You also get people who are very poor and have generous and serving hearts, and you get people who are very poor and have greedy and selfish hearts. So you have to take the time, the talent, the treasure that God gives you and use it in advance. You've got to sow before you reap, right? That's why so much of the kingdom is based around farming. I know farming was Israel's primary means of earning a living in those days, but it wasn't the only one. Jesus could have picked other occupations that didn't involve farming. They did exist. But farming teaches a number of things. One thing is you can't control the weather. You can't control the time of day. It forces you to respond, not the other way around. You can't control when is the right season to sow and when is the right season to reap. Those are preset. In the same way, you can't control whether somebody actually wants to hire you, but you can control how you show up, when you show up, what you show up with, a giving hand or a taking hand. You show up with a giving hand, sooner or later, somebody's going to notice it. God is going to notice it, and he's going to bless it. To have this conversation, when I meet people, after an initial introduction, hi, my name is Paul Edwards, nice to meet you. Yeah, and then, you start to get a little bit of a conversation going. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to ask them about their recent part of the journey that they're on, their story. So I'm going to ask a question like, tell me about something that's really going well for you the last couple of weeks or last couple of days. What's going well for you lately? Not just what's new or how are you or what's up. I don't do that. What's going well for you lately? Right? I'm uncovering the invisible here. I'm opening up this person to say, I'm interested to know what's been happening for you that you're really happy about, excited about, something that's gone. You've got a win, you've made a sale, you've closed a deal, you've got a new job, whatever the case may be in the last few weeks. Tell me about that. And as soon as they start talking, I don't wait for them to finish so I can tell them, well, let me tell you about what happened to me. No, I'm listening. Like a journalist or a TV interviewer, I'm listening, because they're going to say something that piques my interest, and I'm going to say, wait, what did you just say? Tell me more about that. Keep the flow going, right? So, for example, well, let's do a live example here. Kevin, tell me something that's really going well for you lately.
As stressful as it is, I would say my job's going well. I've been one that has been searching for a specific role for many, many, many years, and it was brought to me, and I'm challenged in it. But the people that I'm surrounded by are truly the most amazing team members and leaders that I have had, because they are selfless and they care about each other.
That's interesting. That's great to have a good team around you like that. And I'm curious to know, what's it look like when they are selfless and they come around alongside you and help you overcome one of these challenges?
What does it look like? So I'll use some specific words, right? There's empathy. So they empathize with the situation. They empathize with maybe what's going on. They first investigate, how are you doing, right? That's the first thing. Is there's an investigation that you asked about it. How are you doing? And that's what we start with, every member of the team. And it's kind of what we look for as a company when we hire, as well. And then the empathizing with the situation or what's going on in the world, because sometimes you never know, right? You don't know when your dad just died, or your dog just had to have surgery, or et cetera. Or you found your mother had COVID, you know. And then after that, it's addressing the good or the challenging, right? It's celebrating the good, and then it's also addressing the issues that come up. No, I led a meeting the other day, or a couple weeks ago. It didn't go great. There were some challenges, right? And my leader called me after, and we had a conversation, and we addressed some of the things that needed to be resolved. But then it was, okay, now what are we going to do about it? And let me help you, right? What can I do to help you? And I think that's the big piece, is that last piece of what can I do to, we are all about what can we do to help you be better. Whether it's, subordinate to superior, it's peer to peer, or whatever, we all have that same viewpoint.
Now, does everybody see, okay, time out from the role play here. Does everybody see how much more I know about Kevin than I did 30 seconds ago? I know how his relationships are going at work. And if I want to dig deeper on this, I can. But my point is, I'm being an investigative, curious TV interviewer in a very disarming way, right? Now, this is one of the best openers I have, but the middle question is actually, in business, this is where you make your money. Okay, so pay attention to this question. Kevin, if you don't mind, I'm going to use you as a test subject again.
You're going.
What's not going so well? Tell me about what's the biggest challenge, or what's the hardest part of being you right now?
The hardest part of me being me right now, and there'd be two pieces to this. There's two parts. One is work related, which is carrying the load that I have and everything else going on, and being able to deliver at the level that I think needs to be delivered. And I think that's just something that we as humans deal with. We carry a workload. My imposter syndrome is superhuman. I think I can do everything, and want to do everything for other people. So I would say that's not what's not going well is being able to balance it all. I'm really good when I have a few things, but when I try to take on too much or I have a lot on my plate, disarray happens, right? And you only do so much well. So and that's peaks and valleys, but there's a lot of things at work right now that are expanding that. So that's one.
I was going to say, you mentioned there was something other than professional there. So
yeah, the personal piece, right? I think that the professional, it's easy to just have conversations about professional, get to know somebody professional, but it's when you get to the personal side and you start to learn and get an understanding of what a person is, how are they dealing on the personal side, which a lot of people don't share. It's important. So on the personal side, it's actually COVID. Working from home for a lot of people is awesome because it makes your connection with your family and the people around you deep. I've struggled with it because the ability to connect in, you see when you're not at home all day, you don't see all the pieces. You have a short period of time to really kind of build this rapport and these relationships, right? But when you're home all day, you can see where you're really good at certain things and where the gaps are. And being at home has been a very open place of where the gaps are, like what isn't going well, or where I feel like I need to course correct. The relationships aren't where I would expect them to be with my wife and my kids. Although they would say that we've got a great relationship.
That can be humbling in a lot of ways. What do you find is the best way of countering that? I mean, do you have somewhere? Do you have outlets and ways that you can get out, let off some steam, and then recalibrate yourself, or how does that look?
Taking time, taking breaks when I'm proactive with it. Taking breaks and going to God is the best thing. And I'm not just saying that because we're on this podcast or we've got this Christian, we're doing this Christian networking, career networking thing, but ultimately I feel the best, right? I know I feel the best when I go to God with it. When I'm stressed and worried and I break away and have a few moments with him alone, I feel great, but I don't do it as often, right? So then finding some of the other outlets, going outside for a few moments. I have a puppy, and that's probably filled the joy or some of those free moments, and taking time with the kids and going and doing something with them.
Yeah, good stuff. So time out from the role play. Now everybody see how this is going, and how much Kevin is getting to talk about himself, right? How much of his world he's getting to unpack. And I've only got to 2 questions, and I've added some follow-up questions, but you see how little talking I have to do. And this is what I use on executives, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, influential people. It's what I use on my family. It's what I use with my friends. It's what I use with the people that I network with. You can change the wording of it. You can change you don't have to say it verbatim the way I would say it. But if you start looking for the right opportunity to slide those things into the conversation, and then you remember after you've asked the question, shut up. Don't wait for the opportunity to talk about yourself. You say, self, you be quiet. Right now, we're focusing on these people. right? So last one, Kevin. Tell me about something you're looking forward to. What's happening in the next couple weeks or couple months that has got you really excited?
I'm going to preface, it's going to be loud in here in just a moment. I had kids just walk in that door, so bear with me. So in the next month, in the next couple of weeks, we actually have my wife's sister-in-laws coming into town. And with COVID, right, limited travel and a lot of risk, we're really excited to have family in the house. So
there you go. Getting together with people, other people besides the same people you see every day. That's exciting. And in 2020, that's an exciting thing to do.
Right? We celebrate interactions.
We do. We don't have to look at each other through a computer screen. We can actually see each other face to face. It's wonderful. So time out there. No need to go much further than that. But now I have decoded all sorts of stuff that if Kevin and I were meeting in a Zoom room like this or in a live networking group, he's putting on his best foot. He's putting his best foot forward. But all of us, because we're living, breathing stories, are hoping that somebody will come along who actually gives a rip about all that stuff that stays completely invisible most of the time. Because most people you're going to run into, they're not going to ask you those questions, right? They want people to ask them those questions, and then they'll talk all day long. Well, when you learn to control yourself and ask questions about the welfare and the stories and the backgrounds and the excitements as well as the pain points, especially of the people that you're interacting with, you're showing leadership. You're demonstrating, I can lead myself and invite you along in the process. I can control my ego. I can control my pride. I can control my need to talk about myself. I can focus on another human being and demonstrate curiosity and empathy. And an employer is going to be impressed by that. Because the secret that they're not telling you that they should be, especially the older you get, is that your job, your employability has less and less to do with your cognitive or technical competence and much more to do with your EQ, your emotional intelligence. In other words, your ability to get along with people, to help them, to make yourself useful to them, to not be a disturbance or a disruption or an annoyance in the workplace. They don't teach this stuff in schools, but they should. They teach you it's all up here. It's all about what you know. Absolutely not true.
Yeah. I mean, that's
like
really,
I said, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Paul, that is so true. We use this common word tracks or whatever it work, and it's when we're hiring folks and we're interviewing folks, it's you can teach technical skills and you can teach and learn things, but God gave us a core set of personality and character elements, and honestly, you can't change that and teach behavior. You can't teach personality. You can change and adjust, but you are a certain way, and can't teach that.
You know, it just
Correct.
It reminds me of when I was at Dell and their competency matrix that they got from Lominger, right? They had 14 key skills, and everybody thinks it's all about your functional and technical skill, but that was actually one of the 14 skills. The rest were all about how you were going to interact as a team with other people. So you can see the weighting in that, right? Like, in other words, if you're going to be a C programmer, well, that's the minimum thing. You got to be able to be a C programmer. But how you're going to be one with your team, and how you're going to interact with your team, and how you're going to interact with your leaders, and how you're going to continue to be a person who learns and grows and becomes a more valuable person over the course of time, are were the things that were in all those other competencies. And that actually was weighted 13-1.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, it's, and it's not to say by the way, that your technical skill is worthless.
Of course not.
It's absolutely important. I mean, you talk about a C-level programmer. I wouldn't apply for the job. I haven't got the first freaking clue how to do that.
Right.
And I'm not interested. So even if I had excellent character and you're willing to train, I'm still not interested in the job. I don't care how much it pays. I'll fall asleep. It bores me to tears. So technical skill is important. And we should say that, right? I mean, the reason I can be self-employed as a writer is because I can write. That's what I was born to do. However, I could not work with the people I work with. Not for a second could I work with any of them if I didn't know how to handle them. And more importantly, how to be who I am authentically.
Well, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I love these questions, and I see the value of them, especially as a professional coach, right? These are coaching frame level questions, right? Tell me more is a fantastic way to stay in that fascination mode and learn more about somebody. Clarifying questions, after you've asked the first one. But, in the context of work, and especially in the employer space that you frame this in, right? A lot of times interviews don't necessarily, they're not just a casual conversation like this. So, kind of walk through your own little role play. Like if you're going in, I've got my, I'm going to interview you, and I want to ask you about things, but yet you want to get to these questions. So how does that work? You understand what I'm saying? You following me?
Yeah. Yeah, it could. You're right. You're in it all comes down to that interview or series of interviews that you go through. And the hard part, I think, is that traditionally we're conditioned to think it's a series of Q&A from a panel or from a recruiter. And, they ask the questions, you give the answers. Now, you might want to let it start out that way so that they, so you're not getting, I wouldn't get aggressive and come right out and start talking that way. It's going to depend on the person, isn't it? Because you could have a type A, just the facts, ma'am type of person, and that's all they want to do. And if you can stomach that and that's who you want to work with, then just give them the facts, right? But if you're dealing with anybody who's interested to get to know you personally, Jesus gives us this wonderful instruction. He says, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now, I read that for many years and I said to myself, okay, well, it means, watch your back and be kind. Yeah, but the serpent is not a good example of that because a serpent is blind. Snakes can't see worth a lick. So how do they know? In other words, you could put a gerbil and a gray rock the same size in front of a snake. If you want the snake to tell the difference with its eyes, it's not going to be able to. The serpent can't watch his back anyway. Well, I suppose he can curve around and look at it, but he's still blind as a bat. So it's not a good analogy. Or is it? This is Jesus saying it after all, so what does he mean? Well, the only reason I know this is because I once had a pet ball python. And so I spent a certain amount of time reading about snakes. I had weird pets in high school. I was an oddball. Snakes can't see. So to sense their prey, they use these things called thermoreceptors, which are these tiny little holes on the top of their lip, and it senses the heat signature of the creature in front of it. So that's how a snake can tell the difference between a rock and a gerbil. That's how it knows when its prey is near. Now, Dallas Willard made another good point about this. He said, you notice that snakes don't rush at their prey like lions do. They move at them very slowly, half an inch by half an inch. They're watchful, they're observant, they're waiting for the right time. But when they strike, they're decisive and they make their move. all that to say, I think we could probably get in trouble if we laid down, this is when you say this and this is how you say it, right? This is the human game. And we are sentient beings and we're all different from one another. You're going to run into situations where you're in a job interview with a type A, just the facts, ma'am type of person. There's no point in having that conversation because they don't appreciate it. But anybody who displays any degree of interest in you personally, anybody at a company where you can sense you're strongly aligned with their values and their culture, you're going to get an opportunity to have an initial exchange, or possibly several of them. I haven't interviewed for a job for a long time now, but the last few that I did, I never had just one interview. It was always a couple of them. So maybe you don't get the chance to say it in the first interview. Maybe that's a very much a, just sussing each other out. But by the time you come back to the second one, well, now you've built up a little bit of rapport. If they're calling you back, that means they're still considering you. They still like you.
Right. Right.
You walk in and you sit down and you say to them, so thanks for having me back. By the way, what's gone really well for you since the last time we talked? Give them a chance.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you think about that too in the context of people like, going there from, softening that a little bit, like what's going well in this space in your business and with you, right? So that it doesn't seem so like, invasive, especially when you don't know somebody well enough yet, especially when they're expecting to be outbound and you're kind of introducing this inbound, as a softening technique, kind of framing it and what's going well in the group or in the company or, in the space for you, as opposed to straight to you. Is that another strategy, or do you think you should get more personal right away?
It's if you have any degree of empathy for, or at least the perceptive ability to hear their tonality, mm-hmm. their body language. I hesitate to say a hard and fast rule again here, right?
Sure.
We're always going to run into variables, but people will, but most people, right? Again, leaving out the type A's, most people will have moments throughout a lengthy conversation where an opportunity will arise,
right,
for you to say something like that. They might be describing, we're trying to hire 200 people right now. It's got me going running everywhere with like a chicken with my head cut off. You say, that sounds pretty rough. It is. Oh, shut up. Siri thought I was talking to it. So that sounds rough. Tell me something. I'm just curious. I'm not, but what's the hardest part about trying to hire 200 people? I mean, it sounds hard all around. What's the hardest, most difficult part of doing all that?
Yeah. So another
it doesn't have to be, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So another strategy would be to pick on something they've said already in that vein and kind of ask them to tell you more, in essence, through a question like that. Right.
Well, we do the same thing when we're researching to write copy, right? When I'm writing copy for a funnel or I'm writing for a book, right? We're not going to go out there and write a book to answer a bunch of questions nobody's asking.
Right.
We're going to go out and write a book to answer things they are asking and they are complaining about and they are, frustrated by or and all that kind of stuff. So when I write a book, right, I have a research assistant on my team. I pay her to go and crawl through online forums and Facebook groups and find out what people are complaining about that topic, so that when I write the book, it gets into their hands, they're like, somebody heard me. Somebody knows what my problem is, right?
Yeah.
Same principle.
Well, Paul, I think all this is really awesome. And I hate to kind of be here, almost like I feel like we're rushing an end here, but we are actually about a minute or two over. So what I would say, let's offer this, anybody, we know we are kind of at time. I think Paul, number one, he's offered that if any of you are interested in his book, he would love to hear from you. So, we'd like him to share that with you and how you can get that to continue learning. And if anybody wants to stay on for a minute more, if there's a question and Paul wants to answer it, we'll do that after. But so two things. Number one, Paul, would you kind of just share about your book real quick? And then Kevin, if you would kind of pray us out. And then if everybody wants to stay for a minute more and ask a few questions, I'll keep the line open for a little bit more. But I want to honor everybody who may have to go at 8 o'clock here. So
Sure.
Paul?
Yeah, well, I just put the URL from my website in the chat. And if you go there, you can also reach out to me on social media. My handle on all the major channels is @the_Paul_S_Edwards. So just look up for me there if you'd like to get a copy of it. If you go to my website and you sign up for the mailing list, I'm not a spam email. I send out a podcast episode. I don't do marketing emails. So you're not going to get a bunch of messages from me. But if you subscribe, you'll get a free digital copy. If you'd like a print copy, I can do that for free plus shipping. Just get in touch with me, let me know the best address, and we'll PayPal it out, and I'll get it on its way to you. But that's the best way to find me. And Todd, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and meet everybody and run my mouth for a while.
Paul, that was awesome. And guys, if y'all want to stay on and give us any feedback, we'd love that too. I hate that we're sort of rushed here, but that was just so great. I was just letting it continue. Kevin, pray for us, and then if you need to go, you can go. And if you want to stay for a few minutes, we'll keep going for a few more minutes here. Go ahead, Kevin.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this message. Thank you for bringing Paul to us this evening. Lord, you so calculated. You know exactly where each of us are in our walks and what each of us needs. And tonight you brought Paul to us to speak your wisdom and share your love to all the members that have joined us tonight, Lord. We ask that each member be filled with the knowledge, be filled with the caring, and be filled with just your love. Lord, as I said, you love on God and love on God's children. And if you do that, then he will bless you, Lord. You know where we all are in our walks, and you know what we all need. We thank you for sharing the information with us tonight. And let us just have our hearts and our ears open to hear what we need to hear so we can do your work. Lord, be with those that aren't with us tonight, for families of the members that are here, and allow us to go and just continue to bring glory to you in everything we do. We lift up Paul and his walk and in all the endeavors he's in, and just continue to bless him with everything that you have so he can do more for your children. Lord, we thank you for all that you've done to bring us this kingdom, and we ask that you be with us this week as we go. In your son's name, we lift this all up to you. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
This is Todd Boyum, and we hope you enjoyed this presentation of Fellowship Career Network. We meet every Monday evening from 6:30 to 8 p.m., and we hope you'll join us soon. To register and receive the Zoom link in your email, simply go to fellowshipcareernetwork.com today.